This is Antipop. Primus's 1999 album, Antipop, comes at kind of a weird time, especially for Primus in general. When they first started hitting the scene, it's really not... They weren't really recognized as like a metal band. They kind of didn't quite fit right into like grunge or to classic rock. Primus is just kind of Primus. So you get after the few years of later '90s like neo or proto nu metal into just straight up Slipknot and Limp Bizkit, all that stuff, and then eventually Primus comes around with this record here, Antipop, and that's what we're going to be listening to today. It is probably one of the first albums that got me into Primus. But we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth here in a minute. Other than that, yeah, we'll see you on the flip side. So we are back. So this is a double album, so rather than doing side A and side B, we're going to do disc 1 and disc 2. So for disc 1, we have the intro, Electric Uncle Sam, Natural Joe, Lacquerhead, the Antipop, Eclectic Electric, and Greet the Sacred Cow. Intro, really not too much to say about this one. Pretty short, kind of adds a bit, but honestly I'd say it's not super necessary for the listen to the entire album. However, it does lead into Electric Uncle Sam pretty well. You can definitely tell this is like a late 90s song. It's kind of like Primus is trying to do Rage Against the Machine on this one, like it's, some Sleep Now in the Fire, except it's Primus. But that makes perfect sense because you have Tom Morello playing guitars on this song. There's a lot about this record that I actually didn't know until I started reading a lot of these liner notes, which is probably one of the other reasons that getting into these records is pretty neat. I mean, yeah, you got Tom Morello on this thing. I love the odd short guitar plucking during the verse on this thing. Electric Uncle Sam is a certified banger. Great track. You got Natural Joe. The sound of the song makes it seem like it would be really good off of some of the earlier Primus albums, sort of like a Pork Soda type situation, or maybe even Frizzle Fry, but it's definitely got more of the classic kind of Primus era sound as opposed to their later stuff. You can kind of tell a little less that they got Brain on this album as opposed to their original drummer. Lur's got some excellent guitar work on this song. It's kind of like a sleazy guitar tone he has almost. Like you can tell that they're really kind of going for, laid back, not too sharp sound while still having sharp delivery on it. It's really interesting what they're doing there. You got track 4, which is Lacquerhead. This is definitely the sickest song I've heard about Huffing Pain. Great track. You have this great ascending guitar part that goes up into the chorus, and then it just crushes down with this really goofy nu metal, the heavy bass tones and low tune guitar, and it makes perfect sense because Fred Durst is one of the producers on this track. Go figure. Not to shout out to my boy Fred. No disrespecting or anything. Gotta love Limp Bizkit. This is another one of those things in the liner notes that I just was not aware of. Didn't realize how many people were working on this thing at the same time. Title track of the album, the Antipop. Message of the title track I think is kind of odd compared to the context of the record. You have this song just kind of placed here about anti-commercialism and running against the grain and being anti-pop in general, maybe popular culture or pop music, while also being one of the most accessible songs on the album, and honestly just a certified club banger. It's a great track, but I think that the messaging is a little mixed here with what it is and what it's trying to say. Yeah, that being said, it's really an excellent song. Eclectic Electric. Song kind of sounds like a borderline Tool song from the Anima era. Real long too, to also kind of support that statement. You've got this song that has 3 parts, or kind of 3 suites in it. And you also have feature on guitar as well, James Hetfield from Metallica. which is kind of out of the blue. But you can tell right in the middle of the song it really picks up with this heavy instrumentation, and I'm pretty damn sure that's where James Hetfield is going to be, because the rest of the song is kind of these like hypnotizing and slow crawling parts up until that part. But honestly, it had been a while since I'd listened to this album all the way through, and I forgot just how good that song was. It's some of the parts seem a little slower than they need to be, or might not be as necessary. However, I think overall it's a really good track. Greet the Sacred Cow. This is probably one of Primus's best bass lines towards their later 90s era. This is ripe for like stadium rock. Just the reverb they got on the bass is really, really excellent. The drums and really the rhythm section on this entire song too are really, really tight. Very concise and deliberate drumming, and the bass is just playing off of that perfectly, and the guitar is really kind of taking its own rhythm section stuff too. It's not so much lead in this song, it's really the bass at the forefront of all of this, and it's just got this massive sound. I think honestly Greet the Sacred Cow might be the highest point on this album so far. Anyway, we're gonna go listen to discs 2. We'll come right back for you, and after that we'll give some thoughts on those and then some final thoughts for the album. See you on the flip side. We're back. We've got disc 2 down with Mama Didn't Raise No Fool, Dirty Drowning Man, The Ballad of the Bodacious, Power Mad, The Final Voyage of the Liquid Sky, and Coattails of a Dead Man. So yeah, Mama Didn't Raise No Fool. If you took Les Claypool out of this song, you would essentially get a track off of the first Audioslave record, and it makes sense again because you have Tom Morello on this track. And I mean, this is a single year really before the debut Audioslave record. Great album, but I think in some ways I would actually have preferred that to be an Audioslave track. It's still a good song here for Primus, but I think you can kind of tell that this was some early Tom Morello tinkering and finagling with some of the parts that may have ended up in that record. I'm sure Primus did a lot of the writing here too, but it's just the sound there is kind of uncanny if you listen to this track. You got Dirty Drowning Man. The sounds intro kind of sounds like the intro for like a Pokemon gym battle, or like any 90s or maybe not even 90s, but like like the Sonic Adventure soundtrack. It's real. It's got some goofy Sega vibes on this one. And Les Claypool's vocals kind of leave a bit to be desired on this track. However, it still kind of evolves more into like this brooding sound while maintaining a lot of the tempo and a lot of the momentum of the rest of the track, which is kind of interesting. You have some really nice female backup vocals on this track as well, which come through and kind of shine and are probably a nice focal point of the song here. The Ballad of the Bodacious, another song that would fit really well into Primus's back catalog. I think this might be one of the best tracks on the record. In general, it's got the classic Primus tones in there, and it's kind of got the big swinging, like attitude that a lot of those early Primus tracks have, and it still kind of fits in line with the context of this album while still kind of being a throwback to their old sound. It's really well done. You have Power Mad. This is like another track that almost sounds like a combination almost of like a Tool track and an Audioslave track at some points. It's really odd. It's a little bit short, and I feel like this might be one of the weaker tracks on the album that probably could have been left on the cutting floor. But overall, still decent listen. The Final Voyage of the Liquid Sky. Intro of this track has kind of got like a Green Naugahyde vibe. I mean, that being Primus's comeback album in 2011, in between Antipop, obviously, and then you had about 12 years of no releases from Primus, just Les Claypool solo stuff. So I feel like this song is kind of a sign of things to come. The bass kind of ebbs and flows, and it really is able to draw the tension out in the track and then release it all at once for like a really nice effect. Very, very a telling sign, I think, or a telling song of the direction that Primus would end up taking later on. Coattails of a Dead Man. I am a strong believer in, a strong album closer. And I think this one, while the intro and like the rest of the sound of this song kind of loops the album back around to the actual intro of the album, the intro track, or the track titled intro, and I think that is kind of neat. It's almost like a prog rocky kind of thing to, you know, leave off where you came in, but at the same time the effect here I don't think works super well. You have two very different sounds on this entire album clashing. The whole record's got this kind of groovy nu metal vibe, whereas this last track is kind of like they just had Tom Waits come into the studio because he's on the track, and they were just like, hey, we have lyrics, like what should we do for the, you know, the songs, you know, what sound are we going for on this? And they kind of just let him take the reins. It sounds really reminiscent of Tom Waits' The Black Rider album. It's a great album as well, and it's got a lot of good music on it on its own. But I think mixing the two sounds here kind of make the entire album clash a little bit. You know, it's got the kind of neat bluesy, like rusty Tom Waits sound, but I think it's not a great example of a Tom Waits track. I think he has a lot of other stuff on his own that's better, and this song kind of goes on a little too long. It's good, but I think as an album closer, it maybe wasn't the wisest choice. Overall thoughts on the album, though, I think for 1999, you can really tell that these guys were trying to, you know, stand out a bit more. They were wanting to do something, you know, as the title track says, a little bit against the grain. And in the process, I think they fall into that grain and go along with it while wanting to do something against it. So the message of the album is a little bit mixed. Overall, I still think it is a decent listen. I think if you haven't listened to Antipop before, you should absolutely, it's worth your time. I think if I were to like give this album any kind of score, it'd probably be like a solid 7. You know, this album has its issues, mostly in the second half, but in the first half, I mean, you're just getting banger after banger. And the second half of this album just kind of stumbles here and there over some of its own ideas and some of its own weight. I think some of the ideas could have been left on the cutting room floor, and this album could have been like a 10-track album, no problem, and would have been very, very good all the way through. That being said, give it a listen. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like it. When, you know, what's the album that got you into Primus? For this was mine. Also would like to have a few shout outs. I wanted to thank Chad Zimmerman for getting me into doing this YouTube stuff and giving me some encouragement on that front. I want to thank Clayton Clock for helping me learn some Premiere stuff to get these videos out to y'all. And I want to thank Caleb Bertone for being here to help me do a lot of these shooting. Yes, thank you. Man's been behind camera for a bit of this, and it's been very helpful. Other than that, we will see y'all next week, or whenever I can get a video up again, realistically. Ideally, I'm thinking of getting at least one up a week, if possible. Maybe even more than that, just depends on how much time I'm going to have to spend learning how to use Premiere. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and if you like the video, leave a like on the bottom of the video, and leave a comment, share this with your friends, and let me know how I'm doing. Give me any feedback you want. I'll try to answer your comments. Thank you.